Fertilization and Embryo Development. 2 weeks after menstruation, ovulation takes place. Ovulation is the release of the ovum or egg from the ovary. The released egg moves down to the oviduct towards the uterus. If there has been any deposit of the male sex cell or the sperm in the female reproductive tract, then the possibility of fertilization gets high. Fertilization is the fusion of the sperm and the ovum. This takes place in the oviduct. The contact between the sperm and the ovum makes the sperm to release enzymes. The released enzymes break the walls of the ovum. A small path is created that allows the sperm to enter the ovum. The nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the ovum then fuse. This is what we come to call fertilization. Once fertilization has taken place, the walls of the ovum becomes thickened. This prevents any further entry of another sperm. The result of fertilization is a zygote. A zygote is a fertilized egg. The zygote will have to undergo a lot of cell divisions as it moves slowly down to the oviduct towards the uterus. By the time it reaches the uterus, it is a ball of cells and is called an embryo. This takes place in about 4 to 7 days. On reaching the uterus, the zygote develops a finger-like projection for implantation on the walls of the uterus. Once implantation has taken place successfully, further development then continues. This is what we refer to as pregnancy. The zygote contains all the genetic materials from both the sperm and the ovum. Let's now take a look at the diagram that shows the zygote implanted in the uterus and the structure that develops to keep the zygote in place. So there we have it. I encourage you that you should know these parts of this diagram. Know the diagram, know the parts of the diagram. As a grade 8, it is going to help you. So there we can see the walls of the uterus, we can see the placenta, the umbilical cord, the vagina, the cervix, the blood vessels, the fetus, the amniotic fluid, the amnion, and the fallopian tube at the top there. So in right about now, we are going to start talking about the functions of the parts that are important for the development of the embryo. So we'll start with the placenta. The placenta develops from both maternal and the embryonic tissues. The placenta is responsible for the exchange of all materials between the mother and the embryo. It has the villi to increase the surface area for exchange of materials between the mother and the fetus. However, what are the functions of the placenta? So below I'm going to give you about 4 functions that the placenta performs. Number 1, exchange of nutrients, oxygen, and waste products between the embryo and the mother. Number 2, the functions of digestion, absorption, gas exchange, and excretion in the embryo are carried out by the placenta. Number 3, antibodies diffuse from the mother's blood into the embryonic blood through the placenta. the placenta is joined to the embryo by the umbilical cord, which contains veins and arteries. Number 4, the placenta secretes progesterone hormone. The progesterone hormone helps to regulate the development of the embryo during pregnancy. Now, you will have to note that it is important that the fetal blood does not mix with the maternal blood in the placenta. All exchanges take place by diffusion. Oxygen and digestion products, for example, glucose and amino acid, passed from the mother to the embryo, while carbon dioxide, urea, and other waste products pass from the embryo to the mother. All blood cells, plasma, protein, malaria parasites, bacteria, and viruses do not pass through the placenta to the fetus. Okay, now we'll start talking about the second part, which is the amnion. The amnion is the innermost layer that encloses a fluid-filled sac in which the embryo is protected. The outer membrane is called the chorion. The chorion grows rapidly and gets joined to the maternal tissues. The chorion and the maternal tissues form the placenta. The amniotic fluid. The amniotic fluid contained in the amnion surrounds the embryo. This fluid supports the fetus. It also protects it from injury by acting as a shock absorber and allows it to move freely in the uterus. It also lubricates and reduces friction in the birth canal during birth. From the embryo grows finger-like features called villi. The villi have blood capillaries. The villi and the uterine wall, where they are embedded, form a part of the placenta. The uterus. The uterus is a sac capable of expanding and contracting. The embryo develops in the uterus during pregnancy. The muscular walls of the uterus helps in the expulsion of the fetus at the time of birth. The umbilical cord. The umbilical cord joins the growing embryo to the placenta. The umbilical cord has arteries and veins. It is through this cord that nutrients diffuse through the placenta and are transported to the fetus. Also, the waste products from the fetus pass through the umbilical cord to the placenta. The waste products of the fetus diffuse through the placenta into the blood of the mother. The cervix. The cervix is the mouth of the uterus. During pregnancy, the cervix remains sealed. It only opens when the developed embryo is to be born. As development proceeds, the embryo floats freely in the enlarged uterus connected to the placenta by the umbilical cord. With continued growth, the fetus completely fills the cavity of the uterus. So what I'm just mentioning are the important parts and their functions for the development of the embryo. Now we'll move on and I'll conclude by talking about the gestation period. I'll conclude by talking about the gestation period. The period between conception and birth is called gestation. In human beings, Gestation period lasts for 9 months. By the time it's 7 months, the human body in the uterus has the head pointing downwards towards the cervix. The mother becomes aware that birth is about to occur when the uterus begins to undergo periodic contractions which become stronger and frequent as time goes by. The contractions burst the membrane surrounding the fetus. Discharge of the amniotic fluid through the vagina occurs. This is what is referred to as the breaking of the waters. The cervix undergoes vagina widening to allow the contracting uterus to force the baby out head first. Once out of the mother's body, the baby will immediately take the first breath. This is witnessed by the sudden yelling and crying of the baby.
Yeah.